Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the third part in the White Guard read-along. Obviously parts 1 and 2 are available, so you can go and listen to them if you wish. If you're tuned into the podcast feed and you didn't get part 2, I don't know why that is. It just didn't go through. So it's on my Substack. You can listen to it there, and I will put it on YouTube. It didn't go up there either. So I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, let's take a look at the next part, in which we're going to cover chapters 11 to 15. I've got a wee subtitle here, which is clearly, once you have your epaulets ripped off, that spells disaster. So, here we go. Chapter 11. Nikolka leads the third detachment to the crossroads as ordered by the voice on the phone. There's nobody there. Gunfire sounds all around. Suddenly, a group of soldiers comes running towards Nikolka's detachment. Are they the enemy? No, it turns out to be cadets from the Constantine Military Academy. They drop down and fire, then throw away their weapons, tear off their officers' epaulets and run, urging Nikolka's men to do the same. Nikolka reminds me of Nikolai Rostov in War and Peace, particularly in this scene. Nikolka stood still for a moment, totally stupefied. Then, immediately, he took a grip on himself, one thought flashing through his brain like lightning. This is my chance to become a hero. End quote. It's interesting that they share a name and are about the same age. Colonel Naitours tears off Nikolka's epaulets and orders him to run. He responds, "I don't wish to, Colonel." Naitours rattles off machine gun fire at the Petlurists, and Nikolka stays with him. Naitours is hit and dies in Nikolka's arms. His dying words are, "Stop being so damned heroic. I'm dying. Maro Plavarnaya Street." So you may remember that Colonel Naitours has a speech impediment. So of course he means heroic, and it's Malo Plavarnaya Street where he lives. No, Malo Pravalnaya Street, because the R's and the L's are switched about. So now Nikolka knows his address. Crawling to safety, he takes Naitours' Colt pistol. As he's escaping through the courtyards, a caretaker with a ginger beard attacks him. Nikolka fights back. The pistol won't fire. Later, he realises the safety catch was on, so he beats the man with the butt of it, coolly and decisively. Quote, "The rage that had been enveloping Nikolka's brain like a red blanket suddenly disappeared, to be replaced by an extraordinary sense of total control. He grinned like a young wolf, the wind and frost gushing into his hot body." End quote. And I've said that's some good translation right there. I just need to fix a wee typo here. There we go. He makes it to the crossroads that lead to the lower part of the city in Podol after discovering that he'd had the safety catch on the Colt pistol when it fires unexpectedly. And then I've had ChatGPT create a map of Nikolka's escape route, which, I don't know, it's pretty rubbish actually, but it might be helpful. We get scenes of the chaos as the locals lock themselves away from the fighting. Nikolka bumps into another cadet. Quote, "A young cadet in a grey greatcoat with white epaulets emblazoned with the gold letter V emerged solemnly from the entrance to a grey stone building." The letter V here depicts a cadet from the Vladimir Military Academy in Kiev. Bulgakov tells us earlier in the text that there were 4 imperial military academies in the city before the revolution. The Vladimir Military Academy was an officer training school for young men, just like Nikolka. The 4 academies were the Vladimir Military School, which was an officer training school for infantry. The most prestigious of Kiev's academies produced army officers for the imperial forces. Cadets wore white epaulets with a gold V. This is almost certainly Nikolka Turbin's school in the White Guard. 2. The Konstantinov Artillery School, so officer training for the artillery, Founded in 1865, trained artillery officers for the Imperial Army. Many graduates fought later with the Whites. Kiev Military School, which was the general officer training, focused on infantry and staff duties. It was one of the Empire's key provincial academies. And the first Kiev Cadet Corps, military secondary school for ages 12 to 18, fed students into higher military schools like the Vladimir or Konstantinov academies. Its cadets fought during the 1918 defence of Kiev. Kiev's officer class was drawn from these schools, sons of landowners, professionals and middle-class families trained in the imperial spirit of honour and service. Many of them, disorientated by the collapse of the old army, formed the core of the White Guard units Bulgakov describes in the novel. So, when you see the white epaulets with the gold V, Bulgakov is evoking not just one school, but an entire lost world of these young cadets, the last generation of imperial officers. Back home. As Nikolka nears home, he sees boys tobogganing down the hill, oblivious to the advancing Petlurist troops. Quote, "Look at them, tobogganing like that without a care in the world," thought Nikolka in astonishment. End quote. When he asks what's happening, they say they're, quote, "getting their own back on the officers," end quote. Children echoing revolution. Nikolka reaches the flat, but Alexei hasn't returned. Certain he's dead, Nikolka tells Yelena that he wants to go up to the square by St Andrew's Church. Quote, "You can see all of Podol from up there," end quote. The Turbines flat sits on St Alexei's Hill, Ukrainian Andriivsky descent, the slope between Kiev's upper and lower city. The boys toboggan down that same hill. Bulgakov places the family literally between the cultured upper world of the intelligentsia and the rougher popular world below, a metaphor for their historical predicament. And then I've included a wee map there which shows the Andriivsky descent and pinpoints some of the main features of that hill. The captain with the long pointed nose. A staff captain in an abandoned hut 5 miles from the city receives a call to open fire on the woods. His troops have deserted. He destroys the weapons and walks for hours, only to be killed by passing cavalry, one of many remnants of the old guard, abandoned and hopeless. Nikolka's nightmare. Nikolka sleeps. He dreams of being caught in a nightmare cobweb, and he can't break free. He awakens to an apparition that turns out not to be an apparition at all, but Larry Osick. He's been sent by his mother and has brought a letter from Yelena. We learn at the beginning of chapter 12 that he's Talberg's nephew. He tells Nikolka that he arrived at the same time as Alexei. They send for the doctor. Alexei's got a fever, but his wound isn't too bad. No bones broken or arteries severed. Wait, what wound? We haven't covered that in the book yet, have we? Chapter 12. Alexei is in bed ill. He asks who Larry Osick is. They decide to let him stay, despite his clumsiness. He smashes the blue dinner service by accident, and he has a canary. It's an odd detail to have a guest turn up with a canary. Vladimir Lakshin claims that the canary, as well as the guitar and the lampshade, serves as a symbol of nostalgia for pre-revolutionary peace and a gentle, secure way of life, a world that the characters desperately long for amid civil war. So this is a quotation from his essay, to which there is a link in the footnotes. 3 bugbears of the time, signs of vulgarity. A guitar, a lampshade, and a cage with a canary, like some quintessence of Philistinism, are restored by Bulgakov to the rank of legitimate and even poetic possessions. Nikolka's guitar thrums alluringly. Larry Osick, newly arrived from Zhytomyr, needs only a little seed for the bird for his happiness to be complete. And the lampshade is accorded a status worthy of an ode. quote, "Never, never take the shade off a lamp. A lampshade is something sacred," end quote. And that's a quotation that I've covered in a previous post. Larry Osick recounts his journey from Zhytomyr by train, where he successfully passed through the checkpoint by claiming to be an ornithologist. So keep that in mind if you're ever travelling through revolutionary countries. Bring a caged bird and you might just get through. Clock imagery. I've got a screenshot here showing Nikolka and Anyuta from the TV adaptation with the grandfather clock between them. Larry Osick recounts his journey from Zhytomyr, claiming to be an ornithologist at the checkpoint. Bulgakov then describes each character's mood through clock imagery. Liliena's 5:30 melancholy, Nikolka's tense 20-1, Anyuta's 25-5 longing, and Larry Osick's bright noon optimism. Alexei's fever and delirium are rendered through shifting metaphors of Mercury and time. Quote, "This feeling of anxiety had come and squatted on the blanket in a great grey lump, but now it had turned into yellowish strands, drifting around like seaweed in water." End quote. The description of Alexei's delirium is beautifully done. He hallucinates a mortar in his room and a mysterious woman, Yulia. After the doctor's injection, the fever recedes, taking the time on the faces from a dangerous 5:30 to 20-5. Quote, "The sentries walked up and down on guard, for man has unwittingly brought towers, alarm bells and weapons into the world for one purpose only, to maintain peace among men and to preserve hearth and home." End quote. Nikolka wipes off some of the graffiti from the tiled Dutch stove. He then, with Larry Osick's help, hides the pistols, epaulettes and a photo of the Tsarevich Alexei in an old tin, and with a piece of sugarcane cord hangs it from a hook in the wall between the two buildings. It's ostensibly inaccessible from outside, quote, "to anyone but a small boy," end quote. The revolver has been fired 6 times, a quiet bit of foreshadowing. Chapter 13. We now learn how Alexei was shot. Leaving Madame Anjou's shop, he steps into the deserted Krestchatik. Quote, "Empty streets in general leave a very unpleasant impression, and this one in particular gnawed away at him, filling him with a nasty premonition." End quote. He's making his way home. The narrator tells us that all he had to do was turn to the left and make his way along the back streets, but he doesn't. Quote, "There is this force in life that sometimes impels you to look down from a great height into an abyss. You're drawn towards the cold, towards the steep drop." And I just need to fix another wee typo there. End quote. He has an urge to take a look at the museum and soon runs into Petliura's troops. They recognise him as an officer and give chase, yelling at each other in Ukrainian. How is the language dealt with? See the section on translator's choices below. He runs, firing his Browning pistol as he goes. He escapes around a corner, but soon realises that he's been hit in the arm. He's almost certainly done for until a voice calls out to him. It's a young woman beckoning him to safety. This is the Yulia that he mentioned in his delirium. She leads him through a labyrinth of courtyards, a description that evokes a portal fantasy or a Homeric epic. Quote, "Slipping and sliding a little in his felt boots, he staggered towards the woman's outstretched arms. He practically fell through a narrow gateway in the black wooden wall. The situation was immediately transformed." End quote. She takes Alexei into her home and nurses him until he's well enough to make his way home. It's a calming and somewhat romantic scene in Yulia's home. They even kiss. It's like a warm oasis from the chaos of the city streets. Chapter 14. Myshlayevsky returns in civilian clothes. Anyuta is overjoyed. Chervinsky arrives soon after and the two men quarrel about the hetman's cowardice. Quote, If I were to come across His Excellency and His Highness, I would grab one by the left leg and the other by the right, turn them upside down and bang their heads on the road until I got tired of it." End quote. And that's by Myslayevsky. Karas manages to de-escalate the situation, reminding them both of Alexei's condition. They hear voices coming from Vasilisa's apartment below. He has guests? We shall see. They have a game of cards and some interesting banter goes down, including a line about how Leo Tolstoy would have made a good artillery officer. Quote, "You can write a novel out of sheer boredom. Nothing to do in the winter." End quote. Bulgakov must have smiled while writing that. He and Tolstoy overlapped by 2 decades, though they never met. The Turbines seek comfort, quote, "behind the cream-coloured curtains," end quote. An image echoing Lashkin's point about the sanctity of domestic peace, the guitar, the canary, the lampshade. A knock breaks the calm. It's only a telegram from Lariosic's mother. Relief until another knock follows. This time, Vasilisa from the flat below. Foreshadowing. It's interesting to note the underlying sense of fear that permeates life in Kiev and how it foreshadows the culture of fear that came with the Soviet period. Even under the Tsars, there was the Okhrana, the secret police created in 1881 following the assassination of Alexander II. Bulgakov, writing in the early 1920s, captures how that sense of peril had already seeped into daily existence. Chapter 15. We're in Vasilisa's apartment, eating brains. Not my idea of a good time, nor is it Vasilisa's. There's a paragraph about how much he wants to punch his wife, but he knows better. What's that about? Is it just a device to let us know how unhappy their marriage is? Perhaps it's meant to indicate the stress ordinary people are under. They're sticking banknotes to the underside of the kitchen table, and Vasilisa asks his wife if she knows about the officer searches that are going on in the city. There's a knock at the door. Uh-oh. Remember back in my first post, I suggested that you remember the scene from chapter 3 where the, quote, grey, unkempt, lupine figure, end quote, was watching from the acacia tree. Well, here he is, the wolf-like man with the wolfish voice, along with 2 others. They claim to be Petlurists from HQ with a warrant to search the flat. One of them has a well-greased Browning pistol. Ring any bells? Nikolka's tin hanging from the hook in the gap between the buildings that was inaccessible except, quote, to a small boy, end quote. It looks like it wasn't so inaccessible after all. These are thieves who come to rob Vasilisa after seeing his cash. Vasilisa thinks he's going to be killed, but he isn't. Then the wolfish man picks up a clock. Quote, "Clocks are necessary things. To be without a clock is like having no arms," the wolf remarked to the disfigured man. In the middle of the night, you need to be able to see what time it is. End quote. So again with the clocks. After they leave, Myslayevsky, Lariosic and Karas check on Vasilisa. He's shaken but alive. As they share brandy and preserves, Vasilisa muses, "No alarm system can put a stop to the corruption and decadence that is now infecting the hearts of human beings. I am a constitutional democrat, but when I see with my own eyes the way everything is going, I become convinced that only one thing can save us, autocracy." End quote. It's a fascinating political discussion that rings true. From the Tsars to the Communists to Putin, it's a region that always seems to fall back into the hands of autocratic leaders. It's beyond the scope of this essay to go into that in any depth. I find it fascinating that Bulgakov would put these words into the mouth of a character. Translator's choices. I have 3 translations of the novel, and I always enjoy comparing them. The Petlurists speak Ukrainian in the novel, and it's interesting to see how the translators deal with this. In the original, Bulgakov has them speaking in Ukrainian. So here's an example we have. Roger Cockrell. Look what we have here, Petro, an officer, he shouted in Ukrainian. So he's adding an explicit note for clarity. Marianne Schwartz. Hey, he shouted, look, Petro, an officer. And she's using italics. So it says here that she's using italics to mark Ukrainian speech, following her note that Ukrainians should feel other, but still comprehensible. And Michael Glennie, hey, he shouted, look, Petro, an officer. He omits the distinction entirely. Schwartz explains in her translator's note, quote, the Ukrainian vocabulary is simple and limited. What is important is when Ukrainian is and isn't spoken. For a Russian speaker, the Ukrainian is entirely understandable and poses no obstacle, so the English reader too should both understand and easily pass through those occurrences, which are many. To recreate the Ukrainian's effect of otherness, but not absolute foreignness, I have put the Ukrainian words in italics and quotation marks, since the words are always spoken. Brackets, italics without quotation marks indicate thoughts. So that's a good device, I think. As long as you've read the translator's note at the beginning, you'll know what's happening. And I like Cockrell's approach as well, just to mention that they've spoken in Ukrainian by paraphrasing. Idiom. An idiom in chapter 15 offers a good comparison. Original. Твое поведение в последнее время достигло геркулесовых столбов, which literally means your recent behaviour has gone beyond the pillars of Hercules. This is a reference to the promontories on either side of the Straits of Gibraltar, which mythology tells us were created when Hercules split a mountain. Beyond these pillars lies the unknown sea, so Vasilisa's behaviour has literally gone beyond the pillars into the unknown. So let's see how the translators have dealt with it. Roger Cockrell says, your behaviour recently has been beyond the pale. So he's using an idiom. Schwartz, but lately your behaviour beats all. Not really an idiom. And Glennie, but lately you've been outdoing yourself. Yeah, that's quite idiomatic. Final thoughts. These chapters weave chaos and intimacy, battles, fevers, thefts and quiet acts of care. Bulgakov keeps the domestic world alive amid ruin, the lampshade, the guitar, the canary, the clock. The Turbine's apartment remains a fragile refuge of civilization in a disintegrating city. Which translation are you reading? I'd love to hear your thoughts on these chapters in the comments below. What struck you most, or what details lingered after you closed the book? I mean, for me, the canary's an obvious one. It's such an interesting device to bring into a chaotic world. You know, people running away, trying to maintain civility amidst the chaos. I've then included a list of questions which I would like you to consider if you're planning to attend the video call, which I'm going to host on Tuesday the 4th of November at 8 p.m. UK time. I'll just go through those here. 1. Opening and historical context. What did you know about Kiev and Ukraine in 1918 before starting the White Guard, and how has the novel changed your sense of that time and place? 2. Did the novel help clarify who the various factions were? Hetmanites, Petlurists, Whites, Reds, or did it make things even more confusing? 3. The Turbine home. What role does the Turbine apartment play in the novel? A refuge, a symbol, or something else? What does the tiled Dutch stove represent to you? 4. Family and loyalty. How do the Turbines differ from Thalberg in terms of their loyalties and moral compass? Do you think Bulgakov is holding Thalberg up for judgment? 5. The city as a character. How does Bulgakov make the city feel alive or dying? What emotions does his portrayal of Kiev evoke? 6. How effectively does Bulgakov draw you into Kiev in December 1918? Did you find it easy to visualise the city and its atmosphere of collapse? 7. Chaos and cowardice. Talberg flees while Alexei stays. What does the novel suggest about courage, cowardice and duty in a time of collapse? 8. The populist uprising. How does Bulgakov depict the Petlurists and the social upheaval they represent? Do you think his portrayal is sympathetic or critical? 9. Dreams and visions. What do you make of Alexei's dream sequences and Bulgakov's blend of realism with the fantastic? Do they add insight or distraction? 10. Closing reflections. Reading The White Guard today, do you see any parallels with the world's current political and cultural divisions? And 11. What do you think Bulgakov wanted readers to feel by the end? Despair, faith, survival, or something else? So, of course, you can't answer question 11 yet because we haven't got there, but we will over the next week. And if you would like to join me then, I would love to have you. We have 5 more chapters to go, taking us up to the end of the novel. So we will have that finished by the end of October. And then, as I've said, we're going to be having a video call to discuss the book on the 4th of November. So if you're free and would like to, I'm afraid it's for paid subscribers only, just as a way of supporting this work here. So yeah, if you can, I would love to see you there. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the novel. I'll speak to you again next time. Bye for now.